Welcome, and thanks for joining us as we take a closer look at Veterans Day.
It's a day to really appreciate everyone who served.
We'll be exploring the history of this important holiday, from its origins as Armistice Day
Yeah.
to its evolution into the Veterans Day we know today.
It's a fascinating journey, really reflects America's relationship with service,
Absolutely.
how we honor those who have served.
Let's start at the beginning. What exactly was Armistice Day, and what did it commemorate?
Armistice Day marked the end of World War I. The armistice went into effect on November 11, 1918,
Oh, wow.
at the 11th hour
Okay.
of the 11th day of the 11th month.
Wow.
It was a day of immense relief and celebration as the guns finally fell silent on the Western Front.
So Armistice Day was initially a celebration of peace
Right?
and an end to the horrors of World War I.
Mm-hmm.
But how did it transition to become Veterans Day, which honors all veterans?
Well, after World War II
Yeah.
and the Korean War, there was a growing sentiment that Armistice Day's focus solely on World War I wasn't sufficient.
Makes sense.
There was a need for a day to honor all veterans,
Right.
not just those from a specific conflict.
Right. So it broadens the scope of recognition
Yeah,
to encompass the sacrifices of all who served.
exactly.
Yeah.
Veterans organizations began advocating for a more inclusive holiday.
Yeah.
And one man in particular, Raymond Weeks, a World War II veteran himself, really championed this cause.
Raymond Weeks, I've heard that name before. He's often referred to as the father of Veterans Day, right?
Absolutely. Weeks was instrumental in pushing for national recognition of veterans from all branches and all conflicts. He organized the first National Veterans Day celebration in 1947 in Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow.
It was a significant step towards making it a truly national holiday.
So Weeks was the driving force behind the movement.
Yes.
But there must have been others who helped bring this vision to fruition.
Weeks' efforts gained traction and eventually reached the highest levels of government. He even personally appealed to General Eisenhower, who was, at the time, president-elect, to support the establishment of a National Veterans Day.
Wow, that's quite a testament to Weeks' dedication and the power of grassroots activism.
Right.
So how did Eisenhower respond to Weeks' appeal?
Eisenhower fully supported the initiative. In 1954, he signed legislation officially changing Armistice Day to Veterans Day. It was a landmark moment, solidifying the holiday's purpose as a day to honor all American veterans.
So we have Armistice Day transitioning to Veterans Day, thanks to the tireless efforts of Raymond Weeks and the support of President Eisenhower. But was the journey that straightforward?
Not quite.
Okay.
There's a bit of a twist in the story. Remember the Uniform Monday Holiday Act of 1968?
Vaguely, it rings a bell.
It had something to do with changing the dates of holidays, didn't it?
That's right. The act was designed to create more three-day weekends by moving several federal holidays to Mondays.
And unfortunately, Veterans Day got caught in the crossfire. It ended up being moved to the fourth Monday of October.
Oh, wow. So it was no longer observed on its original date of November 11th?
Right.
That must have been met with some resistance.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Veterans groups were outraged. They felt that moving the holiday away from its historical date diminished the significance of the armistice and the sacrifices it represented.
Oh, wow.
It was like moving the 4th of July.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel right.
I can understand their perspective. The date itself holds so much meaning.
Yeah.
It marks the end of a global conflict and a moment of peace.
Exactly. The backlash was so significant that in 1975, President Ford signed a new law, moving Veterans Day back to its original date of November 11th, where it has remained ever since.
It's interesting how a seemingly simple change, like moving a date, can evoke such strong emotions.
Right.
It speaks to the deep reverence and respect that people have for the holiday and what it represents.
It certainly does. The date isn't just arbitrary. It's intrinsically linked to the end of World War I and the hope for a lasting peace.
Yeah.
Moving it felt like a betrayal of that history.
So now we have Veterans Day firmly established on its original date. But how is Veterans Day distinct from Memorial Day?
Okay.
Many people seem to confuse the two.
It's an important distinction. Memorial Day, observed on the last Monday of May, specifically honors those who died in service to their country.
Okay.
It's a day to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
So Memorial Day is for those who died while serving,
Yes.
and Veterans Day is for all who served, whether living or deceased.
Precisely. It's about acknowledging the service and dedication of all veterans and thanking living veterans for their willingness to put their lives on the line for their country.
That clarifies the difference beautifully.
Mhm.
And speaking of honoring veterans,
Right?
how is Veterans Day typically observed? What are some of the traditions associated with it?
One of the most iconic events is the national ceremony held at Arlington National Cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
It starts at 11:00 a.m. with a wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It's a powerful and moving tribute to all those who gave their lives in service.
That's such a poignant image
Yeah.
and a fitting way to honor the fallen. Are there other traditions observed across the country?
Absolutely. Parades are a common sight on Veterans Day,
Yeah.
often featuring veterans groups, marching bands, and elaborate floats. Many communities also organize special events, concerts, and memorial services to mark the occasion.
It seems like the whole country comes together on Veterans Day to show their appreciation.
Yes, it's a day for reflection, remembrance, and gratitude.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging the sacrifices made by veterans and their families and expressing our collective thanks for their service.
It's truly heartwarming to see communities come together to honor their veterans.
Another common tradition is the display of the American flag. People proudly fly flags outside their homes, businesses, and schools. It's a visual representation of patriotism and support for those who have served.
I've also noticed that people often wear red poppies on Veterans Day. What's the significance behind that?
The red poppy is a symbol of remembrance and sacrifice, particularly for those who died in service. It's inspired by the poem In Flanders Fields, which describes poppies blooming in a World War I battlefield. Wearing a red poppy is a simple yet meaningful way to show support for veterans and their families.
So from solemn ceremonies to parades and the wearing of poppies, Veterans Day is observed in various ways. But is there anything beyond these traditional observances that people do to honor veterans?
Yes, there are also many personal and individual ways people choose to honor veterans. Sometimes the simplest gestures are the most meaningful.
Like what? For example, what can someone do if they want to express their gratitude to a veteran but don't know where to begin?
One of the simplest and most impactful gestures is simply thanking a veteran for their service. It may seem basic, but it can mean the world to someone who has served. It's a direct way to express your appreciation and acknowledge their sacrifices.
That's a great reminder. Sometimes we overlook the power of simple words.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture, a long speech. Just a heartfelt, thank you for your service, can go a long way in making a veteran feel seen and appreciated.
Are there other personal ways to show appreciation besides verbal thanks?
Absolutely. Writing a letter or sending a care package to a veteran is another thoughtful way to show you care.
Okay.
Especially for those serving overseas, away from their families, receiving a letter from home can be a huge morale boost.
It's a tangible way to show them that people are thinking of them and supporting them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And for those who are no longer serving, visiting a veteran's memorial or cemetery is a way to pay tribute and reflect on their sacrifices.
Yeah.
It's a quiet and personal way to honor their memory and connect with history.
Those are all wonderful suggestions for honoring veterans in a more personal way.
Yeah.
So we have the grand ceremonies, the parades, and then these quieter,
Right.
more intimate expressions of gratitude. It truly is a multifaceted holiday.
It is, and it reflects the complexities of military service itself.
Hmm.
The sacrifices, the camaraderie, and the lasting impact it has on individuals and communities.
We've talked about the formal ceremonies and personal gestures, but are there any other unique or lesser-known traditions associated with Veterans Day?
One tradition that's gaining popularity is the practice of having a moment of silence at 11 a.m. on November 11th.
Yes, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. It's a beautiful way to connect back to the origins of the holiday
Right.
and the moment the guns fell silent in World War I.
Exactly. It's a time for quiet reflection, to remember those who served, and to contemplate the meaning of peace.
Yeah.
This moment of silence is often observed in schools, workplaces, and public spaces across the country.
It's a powerful image to think of the nation pausing collectively to honor those who have served.
Another tradition that's becoming more common is the organization of volunteer events on Veterans Day.
So people are finding ways to give back to veterans in a tangible way, not just through words or gestures. That's wonderful.
It is. It's about putting gratitude into action. People volunteer at veterans hospitals, help with home repairs for disabled veterans, or participate in community cleanup projects.
Wow.
It's a way to show appreciation in a practical and meaningful way.
It's heartwarming to see communities rallying around their veterans and finding ways to make a difference in their lives.
And then there's a tradition that's a bit more lighthearted, but still appreciated. The offering of discounts and free meals to veterans on Veterans Day.
That's a great way for businesses to show their support and give back to those who have served.
It is. Many restaurants, stores, and even museums offer special deals and discounts to veterans as a way of saying thank you.
It's a small gesture, but it can make a big difference for veterans,
Right.
especially those who may be facing financial challenges.
Absolutely. And it's become so widespread that many veterans look forward to it as a way to celebrate the day and feel appreciated by their community.
So we have a mix of traditions, the solemn moments of silence, the community-driven volunteer efforts, and the gestures of appreciation from businesses. It really highlights the diverse ways in which people choose to honor veterans.
It does, and it speaks to the fact that Veterans Day is not just about remembering the past, but also about supporting those who are living with the legacy of their service today.
We've talked about the evolution of the holiday, the various ways it's observed, and the personal gestures people make. But I'm curious, are there any traditions associated with Veterans Day that have faded away over time?
That's an interesting question. One tradition that comes to mind is the ringing of church bells at 11:00 a.m. on Veterans Day.
I've never heard of that. Tell me more.
It was a fairly common practice in the early years of the holiday, particularly after World War I. The bells were meant to symbolize the moment the guns fell silent on the Western Front, a call for peace and a reminder of the cost of war.
It's a beautiful and evocative image. Why do you think it's faded away?
It's hard to say for certain. Perhaps as the holiday has evolved and become more focused on honoring all veterans, the bell-ringing tradition has become less central. Or maybe it's simply a matter of changing times and evolving customs.
It's a bit of a shame, though. It sounds like a truly moving gesture.
It was. But even though some traditions fade away, new ones emerge.
Right.
It's a dynamic holiday, constantly evolving as our understanding of military service and our appreciation for veterans grows.
Speaking of evolving, do you think the way we observe Veterans Day will continue to change in the future?
I think it's inevitable. As the demographics of our veteran population change, so too will the ways in which we honor them. We need to find new and innovative ways to connect with younger generations of veterans and ensure their stories and experiences are heard.
It's about keeping the holiday relevant and ensuring it continues to resonate with people of all ages.
Exactly, and I think we'll also see a greater emphasis on addressing the challenges facing veterans today. Issues like mental health, homelessness, and access to healthcare.
It's not enough to simply thank veterans for their service.
Right.
We need to ensure they have the support they need when they return home and are reintegrating into civilian life.
Absolutely. Veterans Day should be a call to action, a reminder of our responsibility to care for those who have served our country.
Right.
It's about honoring their sacrifices, not just with words, but with deeds.
So Veterans Day is a day of remembrance, celebration, and advocacy.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's a day to reflect on the past, honor the present, and work towards a future where all veterans receive the care and support they deserve.
We've covered a lot of ground in this discussion. From the origins of the holiday to its evolution, the various traditions and the personal ways people choose to honor veterans. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Just this, Veterans Day is more than just a day off. It's an opportunity to reflect, to learn, and to connect. It's a chance to honor the sacrifices of those who served, to celebrate their resilience, and to reaffirm our commitment to supporting them.
Beautifully said. It's a reminder that even though the guns fell silent on that fateful day in 1918, the impact of military service continues to reverberate through generations. We must never forget the sacrifices made by those who serve, and we must always strive to honor their legacy. Yeah, it's been an incredibly insightful conversation and a powerful reminder of the importance of Veterans Day and what it represents. I think our listener has gained a deeper understanding of the holiday, its history, and the many ways it's observed.
I hope so. It's a holiday that deserves our attention and respect. It's a time to reflect on the meaning of service, sacrifice, and the enduring legacy of those who've, worn the uniform.
It's not just about remembering the past, right, but also about supporting veterans in the present and ensuring their well-being in the future.
Absolutely. Veterans Day should be a catalyst for action, a reminder that our responsibility to those who have served doesn't end when they return home.
We owe them a debt of gratitude that can never be fully repaid, but we can strive to honor their sacrifices, by advocating for their needs, supporting veterans organizations, and simply expressing our appreciation whenever we have the opportunity.
It's about creating a society that values and supports its veterans, not just on one day a year, but every single day.
Well said. I think we've given our listener plenty to think about. Any final thoughts before we conclude our exploration of Veterans Day?
My final thought is simply this. Take a moment on Veterans Day to express your gratitude. Whether it's attending a ceremony, thanking a veteran you know, or simply reflecting quietly on the meaning of the day, the act of remembrance is what matters most.
Beautifully put. Thanks for listening, and be sure to post a comment or topic suggestion below. Join us again next time for a closer look at another great topic.